Yeah. That again,
Yeah.
like these are all brilliant questions because they're so like they take in so much. It's really good. It's like it's I've got to preface this by saying the six confirmations, like Liu Jing, there's many different translations of this, and many people use different translations. Confirmation is just a translation we settled on, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But some people call it, six channels, six divisions. There's many, many different translations, and people understand this theory in different ways as well. Some people just see it as a pairing of channels within the body. Other people just see it as pure different disease differentiation. If you have these symptoms, you have a Tian disease, and that's it. So the way people understand and use it go from very, very narrow to very broad. And we personally use this in a very, very broad manner. I tried to think in advance, like, how would I sum up what is a confirmation in a sentence? And I'd say basically, and I'm going to have to elaborate on this later, but I'd say that basically a confirmation, you could, or at least a confirmation, the way we understand it is a certain fundamental stage in the waxing and waning of yin and yang, and then everything that conforms to that within the body and in the outside environment.
Okay.
So I can basically say that again. It's a certain fundamental stage in the waxing waning of yin and yang, and everything that then conforms to that. And I'll need to elaborate on that. Yeah. That's a large part of our training.
I mean, first of all, just so that I don't forget,
yeah,
I've heard that question asked, maybe not as stringently to a lot of classical Chinese thinkers. And I have to say, it was a deliberately difficult question because people have failed to answer it in a way that I'm capable of understanding it. But this was the best attempt yet. So
thank you. I'll see if I can explain that attempt now.
Yeah.
So yeah, this all comes back to what I was saying about yin yang theory, from this idea of something. The Tao Te Ching says, what is it like from the Tao comes to one, from one comes to two, from the two comes to three, from the three comes to 10,000 things. So, from the Tao comes something, from something, if there's something, it can be divided into the two extreme poles of yin and yang. So six confirmations comes out of yin yang. So we can say that one of the ways you understand yin yang theory is then by dividing that into 5 and 6. So 5 is the 5 elements, which you talked about before. The two opposing poles of yin and yang, fire and water, then the movement from fire to water and the movement from water to fire, and the central point around which that moves. So that's the division of 5. And we'll talk a bit later about how these two things are paired. The other one is the division into 6. And this is the 6 confirmations. Now, originally, this was kind of a model of 4. So first of all, you divided into yin and yang, and then you'd have what was known as Shao Yang or Young Yang, and Lao Yang or Old Yang, and Shao Yin, Young Yin, and Lao Yin, Old Yin. What this basically meant was, and this is a dynamic model, it's describing the constant change between yin and yang. So first of all, you start with the small amount, which is Shao, Young Yang, Shao, a little bit of Yang, and then that grows and grows to Old Yang, Lao Yang, which is its maximum peak. And once something has reached its peak, the only way is down. So then yin has to grow. So then you start with a little bit of yin, which is Shao Yin or Young Yin, baby yin, and that grows to Lao Yin, which is Old Yin. So that originally started as a model of 4, but the problem was there was no stage to describe the decline of yin or yang. So then it became 6, which is where you get, for a start, Lao changed, it started being called Tai, great yang or great yin rather than old. But then the other 2 confirmations came in. That's how you got to the number of 6, because you have a small amount, which is Shao, a little amount, and then you have Tai, which is the big amount. It's grown to the larger possible amount, and then it starts to decline. And then it declines to the point where it is actually no longer predominantly yang, and it flips to yin, which is now little yin, and then it grows to big yin, and then that starts to decline until it declines to the point where it's no longer predominantly yin, and it flips to yang. And that's what gives you your 6 confirmation. It's basically sort of a little bit of yin or yang, a lot of yin or yang, and kind of in between, which is kind of like not a massive amount, not a little amount. So the smallest possible amount you can have while still being yang is shao yang, and then the biggest possible amount is tai yang, and the in between amount. So it's basically a quantification of yin and yang. And
so if we pause right there for a second, I'm gonna say something, and then you can tell me that I'm completely wrong. If we think, for example, about me just waking up in the morning, so when you're saying basically, we start off, say, with yang, we start off with a little bit of a particular type of energy or a particular type of process or a particular whatever, right? And as the day goes through, the amount of that intensifies or grows. I might wake up, I don't know if this is the case, but I'm saying I might wake up with a little bit of energy and wakefulness. And as the day goes, there's more and more of that. And then at some point it reaches its peak and it begins to turn, and it becomes less and less of that thing until I go back to sleep. At sleep, there should be more yin, more rest, more passivity, more whatever, until we get to a certain point. I reach the peak of my rest, and then I begin to slowly come out of my sleep or whatever. Is that the kind of process that we're talking about?
That's exactly it. So that's exactly right. And that's a very, very good way of looking at it. The cycles of the day, the cycles of the year, the cycling in a human being. Because again, that shows that the cycling of yin and yang in a year is exactly the same as the cycling of yin and yang in a day. It's just happening on a shorter time frame. And a human being, when in physiology, should fit with that perfectly. So yeah, that's exactly it. So we can say, looking at the sun rising and falling, at night it's in a yin state, but as you get more and more towards the dawn, so if you've got the earth here and you've got the sun coming up over the horizon, and this is another very good example of looking at things relative to one another. Like, we know from a Western scientific perspective, the earth moves around the sun, but from our perspective, we are fixed in our central point and the sun is moving around us. We know it's us that's moving, really, but from our perspective here, from this model, we're looking at the sun moving around us, because relative to the fixed point of us, the sun is moving around. But that's just an aside. That's another way, you can look at the Western Chinese comparison.
Right. It's also more practical from the kind of medicine that you're doing, just because the effect that's happening to you is tracked according to that cycle of, is the sun up in the middle of the sky or down near the western horizon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, kind of getting back to the cycling of yin and yang. So we can say, if this is the earth, while the sun is rising, but still underneath the horizon, hasn't popped over the horizon yet, that's still a yin state, but it's a small amount of yin. Yin is decreasing. So that's little yin. As soon as the sun pops just over the horizon, you get this little bit of sunlight. That's then shao yang. You've switched to a yang state, but it's a little bit of yang. You don't want a massive amount of yang there. That would be bad. The sun then rises during the day until it reaches its peak at midday. That is then the biggest expression of yang. That's tai yang, big yang. And then the sun starts to set, which is yang declining, until it reaches that point where it just goes below the horizon. You flip from yin to yang. Then you come out, at shao yin, and then you get to big yin, which is the depths of night, and then yin starts to decline. And that's exactly how the human body should work. All of your yang should be deep on the inside at night. You should not be conscious. Your body temperature drops. Your body doesn't move very much. You are asleep. And then as it gets towards the day, you start to wake up gradually. And then as soon as your yang starts to move out into your periphery, your eyes open. And this process is described in the classics. The eyes open, but you should wake up gradually. You shouldn't suddenly be wide awake and jumping out of bed. That would show pathology. Just as if you didn't wake up, if you couldn't really wake up and you stayed in bed, you felt freezing cold, you felt exhausted, that would be the opposite pathology. So you should gradually wake up during the day, warm up, stretch, and so on. In the morning, you feel a bit stiffer because you don't have big yang at your surface. As your yang moves outwards, your body starts to warm up, you start to wake up more. And then, at the peak of the day, you should be fully awake and function. I mean, you should be fully functional before that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Then as the day goes on, you should start to wind down. Again, it's same with our circadian rhythms. You want to be exposed to less bright sunlight at that time because certain processes happening. So your body is starting to calm down and get ready for sleep. And that's the same thing, this cycle of yin and yang. And that's the conformations are just describing certain key points along this way. The broadest possible points of the littlest amount of yang while it's still being yang, the biggest amount of yang, and then the decline before it flips to yin. So it's a division. There's 6 because it's yin and yang, so there's 2. And within yang, there's 3 points, the littlest amount, the biggest amount, and the decline. And in yin, there's, again, 3. There's the littlest amount, the biggest amount, and then the decline. And this is called, this is described as opening and closing and pivoting, which you will hear when people talk about the 6 conformations, kai he shu, or open, close, and pivot. Pivoting means a switch from one to the other. So the switch from yin to yang. So the sun popping above the horizon is yin pivoting to yang. So little yang pivots, Shang pivots because it's that switch from yin to yang. Big yang opens, which means it's the fullest opening, the fullest expression of yin or yang. And then there's the closure, which is the decline of yang before it pivots and becomes the other. And that's what opening, closing, pivoting. And it's describing that constant cycle of yin and yang. And a conformation, what we talk about as 6 conformations, is just clear points, clear defining points along that pathway.